Howdy, y'all. It's good to be with you. My name is Jeremey Lekich. I am with Nashville Foodscapes. Uh, we are a worker-owned cooperative foodscaping company. Um, I am the original founder, started the company in 2010. Um, and I'm excited to be here with y'all and to share some business skills for foodscapers. Um, Learned by a lot a lot of turbulence and hard trials by fire. And my hope is that uh, that some of this that I offer today can save you some headaches and some heartaches. And what I love about this uh, foodscaping conference is that hopefully some of y'all will be able to be in 4 or 5 years what took me a decade to get to. So with that said, um, what I'm gonna do is offer a bit of my story and kind of why I'm even here talking to you about business skills for foodscapers. Um, and for me, that's important because a couple reasons. One is because I didn't come into starting a foodscaping business having a bunch of business skills under my belt. I as I started this, I learned a lot of this by just going through it and being like, "Oh shit, okay, I guess I got to do that differently." Um, and also, let's see, this will be our coming into our 13th year, and started with just me, and worked ourselves up to a 20-person company, um, and now we're down to a 7-person company. And so that's why I guess subtitled this "Scale Up, Scale Down," because we scaled up and learned a lot. And some of the things I'm going to share with you today are came out of that scaling up um, process and journey. And we're using those things in our scaled down version, and it's great. The things we learned as a bigger company when we scaled up, now implemented as a smaller company, it's a sweet spot. So, anyways, I'll start with my story, and then I'm going to jump into what I think are some important business skills to transmit. And I'll show you a few of the softwares we use, which, for me are part of the business skills. So, I was introduced to permaculture, foodscaping in college. I went to Warren Wilson College, which is in Swannanoa, North Carolina, near Asheville. And we're a college, so every student has to work, and I worked on the landscaping crew. And the landscaping in general was just like awesome. And our landscaping boss and supervisor was just an amazing uh, ecologist, really, that loved to work outside and be with plants. And that's what I fell in love with, was the idea of being able to make a livelihood working outside and working with plants. So that's kind of how I really discovered that that's a path I wanted to go down. Um, and I was taking care of a permaculture garden in front of the eco dorm there. And so that's where I started to see how beautiful food plants can be. Um, and, part of my responsibilities was giving tours to visitors to the college and parents of students. I would give them tours of the permaculture garden. And, over and over again, I would hear people say, "Oh, this is so awesome. I want this at my house." And after I heard that like 25 times, I was like, okay, I guess there's a market for this. And so I was studying like biochemistry actually, and I was like, all right, I don't like this, like, in the laboratory running samples in the machine and reading these printouts. And I mean, it was cool and all, but I was like, nah, I gotta be outside. So switched my major. And my last year of school, I took a business class, an independent study. And honestly, I didn't really learn many actual skills um, for whatever reason. Might be my fault for not paying enough attention. But I did receive the confidence that that there was a market for this, and that I could actually build a business doing this. One of the things I did was I called a bunch of landscapers in Nashville, which is where I grew up and which I knew I was going to be moving back to. And so I called a bunch of landscapers and was like, "Hey, are people ever asking you for gardens and fruit trees?" And the response was, "Yeah, we are getting those requests, and if you do move back to Nashville, please call us, and we'd love to hire you to lead that part of it." And of course, I didn't do that, and maybe I would be better off if I had. No, I'm just kidding. But uh, but I ended up coming back and starting my own business, and you know, with the confidence that I could do it. So moved back and got a job waiting tables at a family friend's Thai restaurant called the Smiling Elephant, and worked there for a couple years while I was building up the business. And I joke I made more money waiting tables there than I've made doing this for 12 years, but starting to shift now, so that's good. Um, I'm going to throw some of those things in just because, like, that's the reality of small business. Now, my hope is that some of you are like, "Psh, whatever, I'm crushing it," and like that's my hope, is that this industry I know it's shifting, and I think that this whole Foodscaper HQ and Summit are working towards that. But I also just kind of have to laugh at small business is friggin' hard. So, anyways, um, I was waiting tables, and every time I would get a paycheck, I'd go buy a shovel, go buy a rake. Very bootstrapped all the way in the beginning. So it was very slow building the business, and that was okay. I was 21 and knew that that I wanted to do this, but like I said, I didn't have a whole lot of skill in business savviness. So very slow building it up. Got a client here, got a client there. The main skill I had starting was really an enthusiasm for relationship. I liked being connected with people. I liked being connected with the plants. I like being connected with the soil. So it's that enthusiasm that I feel has carried me forward to this point, where now I'm giving you some other business skills. But really, it's that enthusiasm. And so, in the beginning for me, the marketing was very low cost and very relationship based. So, I had a table at the farmer's market, and I would sell plant starts for gardens, and, I would bring mushroom logs and rain barrels, and I had a sign that said free garden advice. And so people would come up and, "Hey, oh, my tomatoes are having this issue," or, "this is this." And so then I would just talk to people at the farmer's market at my booth about their gardens, and I would sell them plants. And that was great because it gave me an interface with folks, to the point where people started to go, "Okay, well, you know what? I need to have you come over and look at my garden." And so then I would set up consults, and it kind of slowly built from there. Alongside of that, of course, I was having conversations at the Smiling Elephant, the restaurant that I was working at when I was waiting tables. Probably only like 25% of people actually wanted to have a conversation with me, but those 25%, I would talk, and I got a couple clients out of it. And I actually met my accountant through that, because she came in to order food, and started talking with her, and, "Oh, I'm starting, my accounting business." And I was like, "Well, I'm starting a foodscaping business, and I need an accountant. Let's talk." And she's been my accountant for 12 years. So you just never know what relationships can emerge if you are open to them. Um, and then the other thing that I did that was pretty fundamental to building the business was, any opportunity there was to speak to a crowd or a public uh, audience, different events, festivals, lawn and garden shows. I would take those opportunities, and I did a lot of them for free, and that was great because people got to hear, me talk about this philosophy of foodscaping and permaculture, um, and that helped to also build a client base. And as many of you already know, once you have enough clients, then the word of mouth starts to really take over, which is awesome. Um, so I just got notes that I'm looking at. So I look this way, that's what I'm doing. So the path of growth was slow, as I said, and eventually I was able to leave the Smiling Elephant, um, and work, pretty much full time by myself with the company. Which, you know, um, when I hired my first employee, whew, that was sweet. I mean, I got so tired of lifting heavy shit by myself, and long days where you're like, man, I got a whole truck of mulch and soil I got to move. Woo, and so I would say about year three, year 2 to 3 is when I started to hire my first employee, and very part time, very flexible, but it was wonderful, and it helped me to kind of see the potential of where the company could go when you have one person doing some of the work. So so eventually hired additional people, and you know what became very clear is, and I imagine this is very clear for some of you already, and if it's not, it will be, what my strength and weaknesses were, and I got good guidance early on to hire to your weakness. And so I really started to focus on trying to bring in people that had a strength in what I was weak in. And the main piece of the puzzle that I did not possess, or did not have time to practice, was the presentation of design. So I love to design, I can design, but I have not practiced the craft of drawing or computer aided design. Whatever presentation form. Most of my designs look like a third grader drew them, and for the purposes of communicating information, they're fine. But for the purposes of selling a $15,000 project, yeah, I mean, once in a while you might get a client who's like, "Oh, okay, this is great." Most of them, it's not a good way to build trust if you have a shitty little sketch that you're trying to sell a job on. So early on, I hired a friend of mine who's an artist, and she took the designs and just absolutely made them beautiful, and that really helped. And of course, over the 12 years, the philosophy of design has shifted a good bit. Um, but at least for a while, that was a really wonderful way to kind of sell jobs, was to be able to present something really beautiful for clients to see. And I had a couple clients that teared up because they were like, "Oh, my yard can look like this." And then of course you say how much that's going to cost, and some other tears come. um, so so yeah, slow and steady growth, hired to my weakness. I remember when I hired someone for the first time on salary, and that was really scary, but we made it work. Um, and of course, for most of this, everyone was making more money than I was, which I don't suggest. I think that, uh, yeah, well, I'll get into that in a little bit. Um, so for a lot of the life of the company, we were profitable, excuse me, but only just so. And part of that is because of the value of the service of helping people to grow food, in the garden, in the landscape. I feel like it was still building up. I remember many times talking to someone about a garden, be like, well, it may be $2,000 to $3,000 for your vegetable garden, and they'd be like, ooh, okay, we'll have to think about that. We just spent $25,000 on the landscape over there. And I'd look at the landscape and I was like, oh goodness, like this is just the same boring, plants that are being used everywhere. I could have designed a much better landscape than this, more beautiful and more functional, for $25,000. So we started to expand what were our services, and really more than that, expand the way that we marketed, so that people thought to call us in beforehand. For a number of years, we were the afterthought. It was like, okay, well, we'll do everything else, and then we'll bring y'all in for the garden. And so we really focused on how to put the word out there that, hey, bring us in the beginning, because we can help you with the landscaping as well. And if your goal is to have food and function and beauty, and you have a bigger budget for the landscape, let's fit those elements in. And of course, we're here in Tennessee, where you know I mean, food was grown for so long here by enslaved people, and so the value of food has been artificially low, and of course now we have industrial agriculture, which is subsidized by tax dollars, and so that food is artificially low, and so there's been this devaluing of local nutrient dense clean foods. Now the market is shifting. There's been more awareness of all the nasty growing practices that industrial agriculture has, and covid really shifted the market as well. More people are wanting to spend money in their yards because they're home more, and they see how fragile the system is, and I'm sure all of y'all have seen that. But I mean, shooey, when I first started, I mean, I actually stopped using the word permaculture because I would say, yeah, we do permaculture. And they'd be like, is that like permafrost, or is that like perms for your hair? Or I would say foodscaping, and they would go, oh, is that like the edible bouquets, where you can eat the bouquet? And I was like, no, it's none of that. you know. So I feel like this is a really good time to be doing this work. And yeah, grateful to see all these people doing it. So we started to scale up over time to offer full design, build, landscape services, hardscapes, water management, rain catchment, obviously, ponds, really like anything a landscaping company can do, we'll do it. And so we started to go on that trajectory, and it did allow us to grow. And I say had because things have kind of shifted, and I'll get into that in a minute. But I mean, we had a design department, installation department, maintenance department, and then multiple crews on each running. And it was a beast. And part of what I did not, some of the mistakes that I made in this growth is that I did not invest in I'm going to say salespeople, even though that's not really a great term, but just for the sake of conversation, I didn't invest people that could meet with the client, go from the initial consult to the install, and then even beyond. Because that's something that I was very comfortable doing. I kind of just allowed myself to continue to do that part, and then hired other people to do everything else, and that created a bottleneck to where I was the main one having to bring in work, and it really created some challenges as we started to grow. And the other thing that I did not do timely enough was invest in the right software to manage everything. And I think part of that was I was like, oh, technology's great, but also like people did this so long without all kinds of technology. I mean, people did it without internet and smartphones and even regular cell phones for so long. And the truth is that like we live in a fast-paced world, and it's just like there's a lot of great software out there, and it's totally worth investing in to keep up and manage the business. And so I think it was those two things that made it so that the growth became a lot more stressful, mostly on me. The amount of stress that I had as the business was growing was immense. And so anyways, I'm excited to share some of the things that hopefully will minimize your stress as you grow. So I also found that there was no time to work on the business because I was constantly trying to bring work in to manage the growth of the company. And eventually the right team of people did come together, and we had other people that were able to kind of take clients through the pipeline from initial consult to install. And then we did get some software, and so as we started to scale and I realized the mistakes or the challenges that were the bottlenecks, I should say. As I started to realize those bottlenecks, it was like it wasn't too late. So I realized the bottlenecks, was able to kind of bring the right people in to help grow the company in a good way, invest in the software. And so we ended up being able to grow, like I said, to a 20-person company. I mean, our payroll alone was like $650,000 a year, and so we were rocking. And there started to be this movement, encouraged really by me, to become a cooperative. Actually, an employee introduced the idea of a worker-owned cooperative, and I was like, "Well, that's cool." It's, for me, the it seemed like the clear way for me to be able to see the company go on without me having to be the core center of it. I mean, as I have said many times to the employees and to other people, like, I want to be able to die and Nashville Foodscapes continue on with the work that it's doing. I don't want it to die with me. That was really important. And so the cooperatives seemed like a way to make that happen. And also, the cooperatives seemed like it was almost like, for me, the walking the walk, right? I've talked so much about ecosystems, and we do that. We, build these ecological landscapes, in our clients' yards, and it's like, well, how do I bring that ecosystem mindset into the governance of the company? And so the cooperative presented that, as a way to do that. And so now, as I said, we are cooperative, and it's been a journey. But we're making it. And the other thing too was, I wanted to encourage longevity. Um, at least for a while, it was hard to pay people really what it's worth. And I mean, I think it's still that way. I mean, I think that we should all be being paid the same as NFL and NBA players and stockbrokers and lawyers and accountants and doctors, because we're doctors of the soil for the most part. We're health practitioners. We just start way early with the food. So I think we should all be paid that, right? So of course, like, it's always felt like hard to offer people, monetarily, the value they deserve. And so the cooperative offered this way to give people ownership in the company, and encourage longevity, because I actually had two or three people that were awesome employees. We had a great working relationship, and they left to become real estate agents, which, Nashville, is kind of really hopefully on the tail end of this insane growth. And of course, they, like, have made more money than I can ever imagine, which is fine. You don't get into this to make a bunch of money. I'll tell you that right now. Maybe things will change, but that has been my experience so far. And that's okay, right? Because we're all passionate about other things. But anyways, it's just interesting, right? Like, I have people that love this work, but they were like, "Yo, I got some financial goals I got to meet," and so they jettisoned, and like I said, became real estate agents. And so, I guess I'll back up a little. So eventually, the right team came together. We were able to grow, and so the scaling down part, right? So I just kind of explained to you the scaling up part. The scaling down part was really this year. 2022 has been a very turbulent ride. A cooperative is, I really still believe in it as a beautiful structure for companies. It takes the right people that can sit down and have honest and open conversations, and have trust. And so, unfortunately, there was a small group of people that, you know, wanted to fight someone, and there ended up being a lot of conflict in the company. And I actually left July 1st. I was gone out of the company. And by the middle of August, like, the company was starting to tank, and I was going to get it back. And long story short, I called up a number of people that I was in good relationship with, and I said, "Hey, y'all, like, we still have this opportunity." All the people that were causing issues left, and brought together 6 other people, so 7, and we basically restarted the cooperative, after it went through this huge dive. And it was amazing. It's like the phoenix rose from the ashes. It was like, almost like the forest was overgrown with all kinds of crazy stuff, and the fire ripped through and kind of just cleansed it. And so that's where we are now. We are in version 2 of the cooperative, 2.0, and it's great. We're 7 people. We're probably going to hire 2 to 3 more this spring. But we've taken everything we've learned from the scaling up process, and now I mean, really, and this has been echoed amongst other people in the cooperative now, that as a group of 7, we feel like we're almost as productive and efficient as we were as a company of 20. And so that's like, it's awesome. And so, part of what happened as well, besides the conflict, and so, I mean, I'm not going to go into this too deep, but as you grow, like, I 100% encourage you to have some sort of conflict resolution process in place, because conflict is going to come up. And of course, I had given up the power to just fire people. So I didn't really have a choice. I couldn't really just be like, you know what, you're causing too much trouble. Adios. I couldn't do that. And so if you have that power, use it. And also, I encourage you to put some conflict resolution processes in place, because it's going to happen. So the other piece of the puzzle was that we started to grow too big too fast, right? When COVID hit, the demand was out of control. I mean, we were getting, so many hits every day. And we decided to try to meet that demand, and it ended up putting us in a pickle, because like I said, we hired a lot of people, we bought trucks, and we grew too big too fast, to the point where, once that excitement of the market to have this kind of to slow down, we were trying to feed a beast, and it was too much. So that mixed with the conflict, the company imploded, and like I said, right now it's so much better, and I've learned a lot, and can share a lot with that. So there we are, scale up, scale down. So now I'm gonna go into kind of like the actual business skills, per se. So for me, as I was saying before, like the main business skill that I feel like is really fundamental to running a business is relationship. It's relationship to every aspect, because in my worldview, it's relationship is everything. And so I've kind of broken this down, and there's a handout that you may already have. Excuse me. And it's broken down in relationship to different elements. So in relationship to yourself, and some of you may be way better at this than I was, and I admire that. And this also may sound simple, but for me, it's an important skill. And of course, like, these skills are all need to be practiced. That's how I feel. It's like none of these are just like, okay, cool, got it. It's like something that has to be a regular practice, all of it. And so, in terms of business skill and relationship to yourself, schedule time for what brings you joy outside of the business. I think that is just so important. I think for so much of the life of the company, like, I was just so immersed in the business. I mean, it was like we were one and the same, and I lost a lot of myself in it. And of course, I had to put a lot of myself in it to build it. And I think all of you probably are doing that, and aware of that. But I think it's really important to put energy into a life outside of the business as well. And so with that, create that separation between the business and home. I think that's been really one of the biggest struggles, is to create that separation. And part of that is that my partner also works in the business, and so it's so easy just to fall into talking about it. And an hour goes by, and it's like, well, damn, like, we just had this whole conversation about business, and now it's time to go to bed, and I'm all like, so we've been practicing to put boundaries in place, like, hey, after this time, we don't talk about business. And then finally, create some sense of identity for yourself outside of the business. Whatever that is. I really encourage for folks to not have their complete identity wrapped up in the business. And part of that is because shit happens, and if you've got other parts of you that are not connected to the business, then those sometimes can be really safe places when maybe something within the business is turbulent. Okay, business skills in relationship to the business. create a vision for how you want to work in the company. And what I mean is like, what roles do you want to play in the company? What excites you about this work, and where do you want to see yourself be? And then start making decisions based on that vision. Um, and that can be a 2-year vision, a 5-year vision, a 10-year vision. I really think it's important to articulate where you want to be in up to 10 years. And shit's going to happen. Things are going to change. So non-attachment is also incredibly important. But I do think having that vision is key. And then you can start making hiring decisions or purchasing decisions, um, or even growth decisions based on that vision and where you want to be in it. And one of the things that kind of caught me off guard was I got into this work because I love being outside and I love working with plants and soil. And I do that probably least of all the stuff that I do. I spend most of my time on the computer doing invoices and estimates, and then meeting with clients, which I do enjoy. And it's at this point a delight to be able to just get on the crew and work with them. And my hope, which is happening with the cooperative and with this transformation that we've gone through, we're getting to a point now where like I can say, hey, I don't even know what the job is, but I'm here, I'm on crew, tell me what to do. That was my dream for so long, just to be able to show up and be told what to do and not even really know what the whole scope of the job is. And that's happening, which is awesome. And so create a vision for what you want, and patience, know that it's going to take time, but I do think having that vision and working towards that vision is important. Another important skill to practice is creating structure in the company, in the business, with clearly defined roles and responsibilities. And that's going to evolve over time. So remember that all of this stuff is going to change and adapt and evolve. And so but I don't think that knowing that means that you shouldn't at least start putting things in place. But I think structure with clearly defined roles and responsibilities is so important. And big ambiguity brings stress and turbulence. I've just experienced that over and over again. If there's anything that comes up that feels ambiguous, for yourself or for your team, like go ahead and deal with that, because that ambiguity only, for lack of a better word, festers and becomes harder and harder to deal with. It creates more and more issues. It compounds. So, of course, there's so many different structures for how a company can be run. One that actually, I'm a co-founder of another business called Compost Nashville that does food waste collection and hauling. And one of my business partners there is really inspired to he's done so much research on businesses, and he's listened to podcasts and listened to books, or read books on business and structure. And I'm grateful for that, because that's not something that I tend towards. And so I've learned a lot through him. And so with that company, Compost Nashville, we started following the format of this book called Traction. And at Nashville Foodscapes, we're starting to implement some of these things as well with our leadership team. Now, I'll say, like, reading through this book, there's parts of it that I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. The language on that is a little, doesn't resonate with me. Some might say it's a little outdated. And so it's not like a perfect system and every page is filled with like the most amazing stuff ever. Like, no, I would say probably 30 to 40% of it is like really, really, really helpful. And so, and the main thing with that is it's helpful for organizing leadership and goals. And that to me has been one of the most important things you can do as you grow is creating a leadership team. A group of people that you trust, that are committed really to the success and growth of the company, and that are willing to put the time in to make it all work. And honoring those folks is super important. And so building a leadership team, and then making sure that there's regular meetings for people to discuss the issues in the company, and then being able to set goals for what people want to work on. And so I recommend that, and I'm happy to talk about that more at another time with people, if they want to do one-on-ones or something. Really, any of this stuff, I'm happy to do the Foodscaper. So let's see. I would say I'll move on from there because I could kind of keep going about that, but for the sake of time. So business skills in relationship to employees. I heard this early on, and it feels cliche, but damn, it's true. Hire slow, fire fast. And I have wrestled myself with this idea of like, oh, firing people is hard, and it is. It totally is. And I'm telling you right now, as someone who hired fast and fired slow, that trust your gut. And if you start seeing red flags, like, just jump on it. I just I was too naive. I thought, oh, especially with us being a cooperative, like, things are all going to work out. People who, are starting to cause issues, that's all going to, like, we'll figure it out. And if you start to see red flags, or even orange flags, I like to call them, really start to pay attention and trust your gut. If you start feeling like, I don't know if this person is the right fit, it doesn't mean this person's a bad person. It doesn't mean that they're not going to thrive somewhere else. And that's what I would say to people when I would fire them, like, hey, I want to see you thrive, and that doesn't seem like that's here. Trust your gut, and take your time in the hiring process. And yeah, if red flags start to present themselves, just do it. It's hard, but do it. Because the amount of stress and issues and just like overall turbulence that can come from someone who's not a good fit for the company and culture. It's just, ooh, I'm telling you, as someone who's just gone through a really hard year, that trust your gut, and fire fast, hire slow. Do regular reviews. We do a 30-day trial period, and like, we say, like, hey, the next 30 days of you working with us is a trial period. We're going to check in at the end, and we want you to be honest whether it's working for you, and we're going to be honest whether it's working for us. And at that point, if there's already red flags in that 30-day period, just call it. Just call it, let them go. Hey, it just doesn't feel like a right fit, but we're excited to see you thrive somewhere else. And then we do a 90-day review, 6-month review, and then 1 year. And it's extra work putting that time in, but what we've experienced is that someone is awesome for 30 days, they're awesome for 90 days, and then at the 6-month period, people start to feel comfortable, and that's when some things can arise that it's like, oh, okay, and don't get me wrong, I'm all about having open, honest conversations with folks. But what happened with us, and part of this, once again, was I gave up my right to just have sole power over hiring and firing people, right? There was now a group of people that were responsible for that. And what I got to see was people that, like, 2, 3, 4 times we had to have the same conversation with them about like things that they were doing that was actually dangerous to the rest of the crew. They weren't paying attention, and things like that. And they started to really show up at the 6-month period. And of course, unfortunately, there was a lot of empathy, which, empathy is a good thing, but it can also, you just have to figure out where it needs to be. And so, anyways, I feel like I'm getting long-winded with this, but I just can't, I feel like I can't encourage you enough. Just trust your gut. And if red flags come up, just make the hard decision of letting someone go, because it can cause a lot of issues. People can get hurt. And that's what we saw was someone who people ended up getting hurt because this person wasn't a good fit for this type of work. Right. And that's what it comes down to. And then I think yearly reviews are really important, because things change, and people get jaded, or people have things come up in their life. And I think the more people can communicate, the better. A next, like, skill in relationship to employees is cross train. Build in that redundancy. And, not everyone is going to have all the same training, but if there's someone that's being identified as being able to do some of the client management or invoicing or even hardscaping stonework or carpentry stuff, like try to have multiple people in the different roles that can do that work, because things are going to happen. People are going to get sick. People are going to get sad. People are going to, you know, not be able to always fulfill totally that role. And so having that redundancy, I think, is really important. And one of the best ways for someone to get better at their job is to train someone else in that job. And so I think cross training amongst the crew is really important, and allowing other people to train others is, like I said, a really great way for them to see themselves in that role and to improve in that role. And with that said, put everyone in clearly defined roles and responsibilities. I really can't encourage this enough, and those can look like job descriptions. That can look like a mind map. It can look like whatever works for you and the crew. But put titles, and one of those titles may be general crew, and that's okay. That's great. That's a fundamental position in the company. It's a fundamental role, is to have someone who will show up and work on the crew and get the work done. You know, we used to have a lot of different roles and responsibilities, and right now we have a leadership team that has like a head of installation department, head of maintenance department, head of finance, head of our fleet, and head of customer care and employee care. And all the people that are in those roles are also doing other roles, right? And so we have project managers as well, and then our consultants and designers. And probably for a lot of the life of the company, there's going to be people wearing multiple hats and doing multiple roles. That's just small business. And so, but I think people knowing, okay, hey, you're playing this role, and maybe this role too. I think people knowing the different roles they're playing is really important. And then I encourage people to be clocking in for the different, if you're playing this role, be clocking in for that role. If you're doing this role, clock in for that role. Do it separately, so that if you decide you want to kind of separate or remove one of those roles from someone, you'll know, because you'll start to see how much time is being put in. And with that, a clear picture of who to ask for support. I think people to know, like, hey, there's ambiguity here. Who do they go to get clarity on what needs to happen, or what did happen, or whatever it is. I think having a clear pathway for people to get the support they need to do their role well is very important. And that doesn't have to all fall on the business owner, right? Ideally, you have other people that they can go to as well. You may be one of those people, but I think having it be clear who they can go to is key. Find time to build friendships. Yeah, it's interesting. The people that are now at Foodscapes, at Nashville Foodscapes, after the implosion and the rising of the Phoenix, and this version 2.0 of the cooperative, are people that I had friendships with, and the most important piece of that is because we had trust, right? We trusted each other and we assumed best intentions, and those are fundamental. They're foundational to a good team. One of the issues that we had as a larger company with the cooperative is people started to assume the worst of each other, and that gets toxic real quick when people start to assume the worst. And so I think building friendships and building that trust is so important, because then things come up, and instead of someone going like, oh yeah, I knew that their intentions were this, and this, they're like, you know what? Wait a second. I know this person. I've spent a lot of time with this person outside of work, and they're a good person. So let me give them the space to explain what happened. And a lot of times it's like, oh, of course, yes, that totally makes sense. You were thinking this, and that's why you acted that way, and blah blah blah. So I think building friendships is really important. Transparency. We kind of hightailed into transparency with the cooperative. And I think what is important about transparency, I think transparency in general is very important to trust amongst the company after they are vetted, right? So what the cooperative did is, as soon as someone came in, they were just like, "Here's everything," and I am not a fan of that. I think that someone needs to go through a vetted period before they get access to see everything that's happening in the company. But I do think once someone is vetted and once there is that foundation of trust, I do think showing them all the numbers, showing them the books, the book, the the profit and loss, the balance sheet. I do think people having an understanding and being able to see that stuff really helps, because then there's not these like false narratives that are being made about, oh well, the business owner is making so much money on our backs or stuff like that, and they can see like, oh, actually, we're actually pretty close in pay or whatever, however it works out. Or they do say, yeah, and you can say, yeah, I am making more money than you because this shit's been hard. And, I mean, either way, I think the honesty and the transparency is really important. And it helps to build that trust and cooperation if people know the ins and outs of it. The more people see what it takes to run a business, the more the employees are going to, it's a quick way to see if someone's the right fit or not. If they, if they are able to understand what's going on, then they're going to either be like, yeah, this is a lot and I'm in it, or like, mm-mm, you know. 1099 versus W2. This is a question that comes up a lot. I encourage people to move to W2 as soon as possible. Yes, it's more expensive, but technically it's the legal way, right? Because unless someone is, 1099 is technically a subcontractor, unless they're setting their own schedule and, kind of telling you when they're going to be there, and acting as a subcontractor, then they're not. And, you can, I mean, don't get me wrong, we were 1099 people for 5 years, I think, because it was the way to kind of build up the capital we needed to be able to grow. But I think as soon as you can make the jump to W2, it's just, it feels better for everyone. And what I will tell people is, if you do have people on 1099, make sure you educate them on what it means to be a 1099 and make sure they're saving for taxes. I learned this the hard way. I had someone that was working, and she's awesome. She's still a friend of mine. And but she let me have it because she was 1099. I didn't educate on what that meant. And so tax time came and she got a huge tax bill, because she hadn't been saving and she didn't realize that, hey, being a 1099 means that, no one's taking out taxes for you. And she let me know. And I realized that, like, yeah, that is my responsibility. If I'm going to 1099 someone and they're actually not truly acting as a 1099, then I need to at least educate them about what it means to be a 1099, that they need to be tracking all of their expenses and their mileage to write that off, and that they do need to be saving for taxes because they're going to have to pay taxes. And so all of that to say, move to W2 as soon as you can. So have an easy and accurate system for clocking in with employees. We use QuickBooks Time. It's worked for us. I think some more have come out since we were looking, but when we were looking, that was the one that was and of course it was called T-Sheets at that point. They got bought by QuickBooks. But what I loved about it is I can pull really easy project reports. So if we want to see the actual hours on a job, or if we even are mid-job and we want to see how many hours have gone into it, it's really easy to just see how many hours have been put on that job, and so I definitely think that's a piece of software that I would invest in, is something so that it's easy for people to clock in, clock out, and you can track whether it's on the job or whether it's doing proposals or whatever it is. And I even recommend that salary folks clock in and change what they're clocking into based on what they're doing, because otherwise it gets ambiguous, right? It's like, okay, well, what did you spend your 40 hours doing? And I'm saying this as someone who didn't clock in for most of the life of Nashville Foodscapes, right? Because I was like, well, clearly everything I'm doing is helping the company. And then we now are all hourly. Everyone is hourly at Foodscapes now, and that is a great shift. I actually encourage that. We had people salaried for years, and now we are hourly, all hourly, and it's wonderful. And I've had to practice clocking in now, and it's great. And I like the hourly because you know people have to clock in, right? And so it encourages people to make sure they're documenting what they're doing in that way. And if someone's on salary and they're working 45, 50, 55 hours a week, well then it's time to probably hire another person to do that, because burnout is real. Burnout is super real in this line of work. And when we're the business owners, like, it's easy to kind of just burn yourself out and keep going. I mean, I don't know how many times I've said, "Hey, I'm burning the candle at both ends and I'm on my third candle." Um, but with employees, it's different, because if they're feeling burnt out, they're, you know what, I can go make money doing this. I'm going to leave. And so I think hourly is just a really good way to make sure that people are not working more than they really need to, or should be. And it makes sure that people's hours are being documented. And then, like I said, there's no ambiguity. Um, Easy and organized communication is another really important skill for a team. We use Slack and we love it. It's been free. I mean, we've been using it for, I don't know, 7 years maybe, and we've never had to do anything more than the free version. So it's kind of, for me, like a easy one, low hanging fruit, um, because it's free and it's great. Here in a little bit, I'll show you how we use it. I'm going to go through a couple of our softwares so that you have a sense of what they look like. But Slack's great because it keeps all of our communication in one place, one app. You can use it on the computer, use it on the phone, and we have, each job that comes up has its own channel so that the team can communicate according to that project. We even track receipts in it. It's just been a really wonderful way to separate really work from personal life. So we don't have text messages going all around. It's all in Slack. You can turn off notifications if you're not working. Yeah, it's been really one of the best pieces of software to implement, and it's free. So now I'll move on to business skills in relationship to clients. Determine who your market is. That's, people say that a lot, and it's hard to do. But I think once you have enough clients, you get a sense of the trend and the pattern, and then figure out, where do they circulate? Where do they do their shopping? Where do they do their recreating? Where do they go play? Well, that's recreating, but where do they move around in their life? And then figure out how you can integrate into those places. So some of the ones that have worked for us are the farmers market, as I said earlier. The like Earth Day festival. There's a big Earth Day festival here in Nashville, and that we'll set up a booth, and we've gotten some pretty great clients out of that, because people are going there because they want to celebrate the Earth, and we're like, hey, guess what? We can help you do that in your own yard. Local publications. That's a great way to get the word out. And I do think having like some sort of like promo code is helpful, because then you can track whether those publications are actually helping you to bring in clients or not, because some of them aren't that cheap. We've done like NPR radio ads, and those are cool. It's fun to hear your company on the radio. I don't feel like we've gotten a lot of direct leads out of that, but here's the thing about client acquisition. The more times people can hear you in different places, the more that it's going to encourage them to reach out. That's kind of a marketing strategy that I've learned is, if they hear you on the radio, and then they see you in this publication, and then they meet you at a festival, that's going to build trust. And it's kind of weird, right, that someone could build trust in that way, but that's how you build trust in a capitalist system, really, in some ways. So I think there's a lot of other ways to do it that are more relationship based, and I think speaking is a really good one, and then meeting people after. I think that's really great way to do it. And then with the clients that have been really great clients, like, let them know, hey, put the word out, and they will, they already will. But I do think that, I mean, ideally, word of mouth is just how it works. I mean, we don't really do a lot of advertising, and it means that, like, for instance, we don't have a lot of work in January, this month, and that's okay, because we've established as a team that we're okay with slow periods. So actually, most of the people on the team right now have another part-time job that they got for the winter, because we didn't want to have to stress about trying to bring in work in what is a slow season, and we didn't have to want to, like, put a bunch of energy into going to markets and paying money to be in publications, and we just didn't feel like putting that time in. And so then we just put our energy into figuring out how we personally make it through a slow time, being this month of January. So with clients, make it easy for them to know your process and for them to book a consult. Have it on your website, wherever they go to book the consult. Have it written again, kind of what that consult is about, and what would happen next, ideally. Set the expectations up front. And then I totally encourage you to have it so that people pay for the consult when they book. Most of you may already be doing this, but that was something that got implemented a couple of years ago, and I love it, because I don't know, at least for me, when I would do the consult, I would say, "Oh, okay, well, yeah, I'll invoice you later," or I don't know, whatever. I would not in the moment be like, "Okay, yes, you need to pay me right now." It always felt weird, especially after you have this, like, great intimate consult, and it's feeling good. I don't know. Sometimes I would just get a little hesitant about, like, okay, you now need to pay. And so having people pay for the consult before you even step foot is a really great way to make sure that they're committing to being there. We use Calendly, another piece of software, website, and you put your availability on there, and then you send them a link, and they get to pick from your availability when to have a meeting. And I love it. It saves everyone time. And then they pay as they're booking through the website, through Calendly. So that's been a really wonderful addition, is just making it easy. I don't know how many back and forth conversations I've had over email with people trying to schedule. And, it's like the thing that I've had to let go of. There's some times where I'll do a consult and I'll be driving, from the north part of Nashville to the south part of Nashville, because, people are booking when they want to book. And, but I have found that to be not very often. And the benefit, this time I save of not having to have that conversation, is really great. And having people pay up front saves me time as well, having to worry about getting that consult fee in. So I think when you're doing the consult, set clear expectations of your process. Hey, we do charge for design, or I mean, really, also the timeline. If y'all are a couple months out, lay it out for them. Like, hey, it's going to be this fall before we can actually work with you. I find, even if the client is, like, disappointed to hear that, the fact that you've set it up front, a lot of times they'll just be like, okay, well, I guess that's what it is, and I'm looking forward to it. Another I think really important skill to implement in your initial consult is to discuss the budget with the client. It sometimes can be really uncomfortable to have that conversation, but I really encourage folks to integrate that into the initial consult. And I'll start by saying, so do you have a sense of what your budget is for this project, or at least for phase one of this project? And, I would say 50% of the time people are like, yeah, I'm thinking this amount of money. 50% of the time they're going to go, oh, I don't know. I've never had any work like this done, so I don't even know what it costs. Well, what that means is, I have a sense, but I don't really want to tell you. And so then I just start throwing out numbers, and I say, okay, fair enough. Well, if I were to say $20,000, what do you think? Once you start throwing out numbers, especially bigger numbers, you're going to quickly get a sense of what their budget is. Almost 100% of the time, they'll go, "Oh, okay. Well, I was thinking more like $10,000. Great. Okay, thank you. So your budget is about $10,000." Once you start throwing out numbers, people react, and so I really encourage folks to do that. It will just save you a lot of time, and it will save them time too, because it's like if you don't have a sense of budget, then you build this proposal, and unfortunately, sometimes like if you send a proposal to someone and it's a lot more than they were expecting, like it's strange because you would think they would say, "Hey, this is more than I was expecting. I was hoping for this much." Sometimes they'll just be like, "Well, this is more than I can afford. Too bad." And it's like, "Yo, this is a conversation." So I think having a sense of budget up front helps so that when you build a proposal, you're at least getting close to what they were thinking, and then that conversation can ensue. So yeah, the budget conversation. But I love that technique of just throwing numbers out, being like, "Okay, so $25,000, and I mean, you'll be surprised sometimes we're like, "Yeah, yeah," and you're like, "Okay, 50," like just work that spectrum. Um, and then lastly, with clients, have a very clear internal client pipeline. I think this is essential to increasing efficiency and essential to client satisfaction because they may not have a sense of the whole pipeline, but because you do, you're going to be communicating with them clearly, whether it's about getting the deposit or whether it's about when you're going to start working, or whether it's a number of other things, and they're going to feel cared for. And that's really important. We use ClickUp to track our pipeline, and I'll show that to everyone in a minute or in a few minutes, depending on how long-winded I am. But there's a lot of CRMs, they call them client relationship managers. And, I'm not going to sit here and say that ClickUp's the best. I mean, shit, they ain't paying me I'm not sponsored or anything. But I've used a number of different ones, and ClickUp seems to be kind of my favorite so far, and our team really loves it as well. There's some things about it that aren't great, but all of them are going to be that way. So, it's kind of like, honestly, find one that feels good, that you feel excited to learn, or there's someone already in your life that knows how to use it. That's a great way to kind of pick one, is if you have access to someone who already knows how to use that CRM and they can train you in it. With ClickUp, I had a fellow landscaping company friend that started using it, and they kind of gave me a quick tutorial on it, and I was like, "Okay, this is cool." And then from there, I actually hired a ClickUp expert to kind of fine tune things. So, and now, like I said, I'd be happy to do one-on-ones with folks on that if they're interested through the Foodscaper. So I guess with that pipeline, and you'll see when we do ClickUp, but like we ask for a 50% deposit before we say we need your deposit before we'll put you on the calendar. And that will definitely encourage people. If you have someone who's kind of, and say, "Hey, look, we need this 50% deposit before we can give you any dates." And we always say, and our calendar's filling up fast. I mean, even if it's not, it's one of those little things that if you throw in there, it definitely helps encourage clients to shit or get off the pot. And we get signed proposals. I didn't do that for most of the life of the company. And, I only had one or two instances where that would have been helpful. But it feels like a good practice, and it feels like a level of professionalism that I think clients appreciate, and I'll tell you what, it definitely encourages them to read the proposal. If they know they're signing it, then they're going to read it. And it's helped people say, "Hey, I read this," and like we have a thing in our proposal, and I have a terms and conditions in the handout. You'll see our terms and conditions. But there's one thing about, like, if we hit irrigation lines, we are not responsible for paying to fix them. We will fix them, but you're going to pay us to fix them, or you're going to hire an irrigation company, because as some of you or most of you already know, like, irrigation companies do not have maps of where the irrigation lines run. And so, you'll do your best to mark the heads and follow it, but I don't know, it's like you dig in a hole for a tree and all of a sudden you hit one, and then it's on you to fix it. And it's like, no, hold on. No one told me it was here, and so we have in our terms and conditions that if we hit it, it's not on us. And so we've had clients who, because they signed it, they read and they said, "Hey, I read this and just wanted to ask you a few questions about it." So, um, all right, business skills in relationship to budget. Increase your financial literacy as soon as possible. My story is that I didn't have a lot of great financial literacy, even though my grandfather was an accountant. He didn't really take the time to pass that information down on to me. Um, but so I just kind of ran the company, not really knowing about what their cash flow was, but just knowing, okay, well, there's money and we're doing fine. And then one winter, we didn't have much work, and I had a number of employees that were awesome, and I wanted to keep them going, and so I paid them to continue to work at my house, actually, which was great. But the company ran out of money, and I had this like awakening, this epiphany of like, oh shit, like I've got to change the way I do this because this is not working. And so now I am, an evangelist for financial literacy. As a small business owner, it's just one of the keystones of success, I think, because it allows you to make really educated decision. And hopefully some of y'all have already like figured this out way before I did. But with that, like, learn to read a profit and loss. First of all, have a bookkeeping software. We use QuickBooks. I'm not going to say QuickBooks, like I said, they ain't sponsoring me, so I'm not going to say like it's the best one out there. It's just the one that really, honestly, my accountant wanted me to use. We were using a different one, Xero, XERO, and she was like, "Hey, if you could use QuickBooks, that would be great because it will make her life easier." And I was like, "Well, I don't care, if that's what you want, we'll use QuickBooks." So we use QuickBooks, and you know, uh, we use it really just for invoicing. We use a different software for building proposals, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But we use it mostly for invoicing, and but because of that, we also we track our expenses in there as well. And so because of those two things, we're able to get our profit and loss reports and our balance sheets. And those are the profit and loss are just so helpful for understanding the financial health of the business and kind of making important decisions. So learn to read that stuff. Learn to create. I'll say monthly, quarterly, and yearly budgets. I think in this industry, in the foodscaping industry, monthly budgets are absolutely essential. Yearly budgets are important, but we actually had the experience. I was running tight monthly budgets for a while, and then some other folks in the cooperative decided that they were going to take charge of the finances and stop paying attention to monthly budgets and only started paying attention to yearly budgets and a little bit of quarterly budgets. And we ended up in a really we ended up struggling financially because the monthly budgets were not being looked at. So it kind of reaffirmed to me that in our industry, because it is like this, I think all of you probably have experienced that right now. It's like, okay, there's so much work, and then, oh shit, there's not very much work. Because of that, I think monthly budgeting is super important. We use YNAB or youneedabudget.com for that, and I love it. It's it's got its limitations, but honestly, it's because it's so easy to use and it's actually fun to use. It's great. I love it. So between doing monthly budgets in YNAB and then doing quarterly and yearly budgets in QuickBooks and then also LMN, it's incredibly helpful. With the financial literacy, like, stay up to date on your aged receivables, which is not really a financial literacy thing as much as a just like make sure you get your money right. Aged receivables are people who haven't paid their invoices, and it's actually quite amazing how much money racks up when you're not paying attention to who hasn't paid their invoice. So make sure you have a really good way to track that, and QuickBooks will do that if you're invoicing it or whatever accounting software, bookkeeping software you're using. Find an accountant or bookkeeper that you can trust. If it's a family or friend, great. Interview a few if you need, but find someone that you really jive with, that is excited and understands, or at least is excited about foodscaping. I think it's really important to have a good accountant or bookkeeper that you do trust and that can make sure that things are running tight in that lane. So with budgeting, especially monthly budgeting, budget for if you're planning to hire someone, a new hire, in the next season or something, or if you're planning to buy a truck, go ahead and start budgeting for them before you do it. And then that will give you the confidence to know you can afford it. So that's a practice that I started many years ago, where it was like, okay, we want to buy this truck and it's going to cost this much a month, or we're going to add someone to our crew and that's going to increase our payroll by this. I started going ahead and budgeting for that even months before it happened, so that I had a clear sense of whether we were going to be able to afford it or not. And of course, like, yes, once you get a new truck and you get a new hire, like ideally you're able to expand and bring in more income because you're going to have more jobs, but it doesn't always work like that. I mean, it's like you hire that new person and you buy that new truck, and then for whatever reason, no one's calling, or no one's going through your website or emailing. That happens. And so I think going ahead and budgeting for those things before they happen is really important, and will just lay a foundation so that you can adapt, because in the end, like, adaption is the name of the game for like millions of years. That's it. We have to adapt. So let's see. Yeah. So budget. I definitely am like I said, an evangelist for financial literacy and budgeting. Okay. Business skills in relationship to growth. Invest in a good team with a clear structure. That I've already talked about that, but really put the time in to find people that you trust, that want to be there, are hardworking, are excited. I think that's just, that will make or break a company, as I saw this year. We had part of our team was a pretty good team, and the other part was not a good fit, and it really hurt the company. So invest in a good team, have a very clear structure in place, and it will take you far. Another skill, and I've already talked about this too, is invest in software. Like I said, I kind of dragged my feet with that, but it's really important. So we use LMN, or Landscape Management Network, for proposals. We use ClickUp for tracking client pipeline. We use Google Workspace for email and Google Drive. We use Slack for team communication. We use QuickBooks for invoicing and reporting. We use QuickBooks Time for time tracking. And then like Adobe for people to sign digitally proposals. We have tried to figure out how to like condense this. It's like, hey, can we just use like half of those? But for now, those all play an important role, and it is what it is, right? But they are amazing. So what I'm going to do is, I have a few more things to talk about, but I'm going to show you quickly ClickUp and Slack, just for those who haven't seen them, just so you have a sense of what a client pipeline looks like. So let me share my screen. All right. So, so this is Slack. Some of you have already seen this, but these are all the channels on the side. So we have one for bank deposit. Any one time, me or someone else, and there's only 2 or 3 of us that actually make bank deposits, but we put them in there so it's recorded. These are all jobs. Michelle is a job, and see, we post receipts for things in there. Need to evaluate and repair the irrigation system notes. Colmenares is another job. You can see receipts in here. And then there's conversations that happen, right? Because leading up to a job, there might be things that people need to talk about. And so it's great because all of that can be in this channel. And it's like, hey, we're going to need this, this, and this. Let's make sure we have that, or whatever. Fleet maintenance records. So oil changes, tire rotations, all that stuff. You start to get a few trucks, making sure you have good fleet management is really important, because some of you probably have already experienced, like, when a truck goes down, that is one of the most expensive things. Down equipment and employee turnover. That is 2 of the most expensive parts of running a business. We have a leadership team channel, so we can talk about things. There we go. See, I was like, hey guys, we should do this rainwater catchment. And just all kinds of conversations about the stuff that the leadership team is talking about. So anyways, this is just a bit of how Slack works for us. And like I said, I absolutely love it. We even have a social media one, which hasn't been used in a while. But if someone takes a picture on a job site and they're like, hey, this would be great on social media, they can post it there. And then whoever manages social media can use that. And then we have like a general team talk, which allows us to just like talk about stuff and, relay important information. The whole team needs to know, hey, this key is now here, as you can see here. Or just like, hey, y'all, look what I did. This is cool, and the whole team can be like, wow, sweet, So that's Slack. This is ClickUp. And, some sort of way to know where clients are. So we've got an install pipeline, a howdy pipeline, which is our like initial consult pipeline, a maintenance pipeline. And so this is our installation one, and it's broken down into lead, right? So that's going to be someone that we've done an initial consult with, and we've sent a proposal to, as you can see. And then if someone were to say, hey, the proposal looks good, we're ready to move forward, then they move to onboarding. And then sometimes even when they move to onboarding, we still have to they may say good to go, and then they decide that they want to revise the proposal. And this is not a great example because there's not a whole lot of people in onboarding, but this is where we would, for instance, I'll just use this person as an example. We would say proposal accepted, need deposit, and then over here we would say send deposit invoice, and then let's say I send the deposit invoice, and I would say deposit invoice sent. And then really what will happen is once they send their deposit, as I was saying earlier, then I would change this to deposit invoice received and schedule installation. And then once it says schedule installation, then it goes to our all clients. And then this is how we schedule jobs, because they'll start to show up in here, and everyone is scheduled right now. But these are all of our trucks. And as some of you have already experienced, making sure that the right jobs, the right trucks are where they need to be is great. There's different views with this. So this is a calendar view, and you can see, we'll pull people from over here onto the calendar. And so it makes it really easy for scheduling. And we have our team in here. So I'll show you, this is like a deposit invoice received, schedule, and actually, these only work as well as you use them. So there's obviously like this one needs a little bit of updating, but it's mostly up to date. And we got a set post for this, and we wanted to schedule that separately. So you put that in there. And you can upload photos here, which is great. And there's one thing I was going to show you. Sometimes, well, we didn't do it on this one, but we'll put like who's on that crew to make sure that we're not over, scheduling the same person on two jobs or something like that. And it will show up here. So anyways, that's like a real quick overview of ClickUp. But once again, it's been really a great way for us just to kind of keep track of everything. You can see here, this is, so I kind of jumped around. Excuse me, I tend to do that. So lead, onboarding. Once they've paid their deposit, see, actually, I have an automation here. So this person who I was working with earlier, and I did schedule installation, automatically becomes an active client because they've paid their deposit and we're scheduling installation. I'm going to move them back because then that's not actually accurate. I was using that as a example. So I'm going to move them back to onboarding. But anyways, once they pay their deposit, they move automatically to active. And then once they're in active, we make sure that their deposit is, they should only be inactive if their deposit invoice was received. And then prepare for installation. If we've already scheduled installation, then it changes to prepare for installation. And then installation in progress. And then offboarding, right? So installation is complete and we just need to send the final invoice, and then final invoice received. And then like this one, for instance, Debbie Gould, we will be moving her to former because she's done. And as you see up here, we also have contract signed. And actually, most of these have their contract signed, but once again, you've got to go in and actually use it. So, I mean, here I am See, practice. It's all about practice. You gotta do it. And then 811, which is the utility location service, making sure that we do that. And then there's all these tags. So, anyways, that's a quick dive into ClickUp, but it's been great. All of them, you got to use them, or not, or they only work as well as you use them. So let's see. I was going to show y'all. Let me show y'all Element real quick, just because the thing is, these, like, Element is probably our most expensive software, but for building proposals, it's awesome. And so, you, like, here, got all of the different crew, our trucks and the different plants, mulch, and then of course we've entered everything in over here. So you just, boom, and it brings it right in. So it's a pretty amazing software for building proposals. And one thing while I'm in here, I wanted to make sure I let people know, when you're building proposals, make sure you charge for any equipment or trucks you're using, because it's easy to just kind of assume that's part of it. But if you're not charging for the truck in your proposals, then you're going to actually end up losing money, because you're not accounting for not only gas but wear and tear. Anyway, so this is Element, and what's great about this is, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, is we've got an analysis up here, so it tells us what our net profit is, what our break-even point is. So this is a smaller job, but it's like super helpful to see, like, okay, cool, like, this is how much we're going to make. Is it worth it? Do we need to raise the price on it? All those kind of things. And I mean, of course, estimating is, like, that's a whole art and science in a lot of ways, but this has made it really easy for us to get a sense of what we're profiting on each job. Okay, so the last things that I'll hit, well, this is still in relationship to growth. Pay with cash for purchasing equipment and trucks for as long as you can. And when I say pay cash, I mean, like, pay for the, if the truck's a $10,000 truck, pay $10,000 for it and be debt free. Do that for as long as you can, and it makes sense. Once you start financing, it just means that you gotta make sure you're bringing in the work to pay for that, and that's where also charging for your trucks on jobs helps to make sure you're covering that. But if you think that in the next year you may need capital for financing, start exploring that up front. Don't wait until you need it to start exploring it, because sometimes it can take a while. Obviously there's banks. Personal relationships are another really good option. That's where our main loan for our trucks and machine are from, is a really good family friend of mine who, was like, hey, I don't really love the stock market. Would you be able to do a 5% return? Well, I said, hey, I know that you're not, stoked about investing in the stock market. You want to invest in us, and so that has worked out really well. But once again, as I said before, start, if you're going to finance a new truck, budget for those payments before you make that purchase, so that you can make sure you can afford them. Because, yes, once you have that new truck, you can do double the amount of jobs, but guess what? There may not always be double the amount of jobs. So make sure that you can afford it. And that's how you'll get a sense of if you need to charge more or not. If you're wanting to buy another truck or hire another person and you're struggling to afford that, well, then you charge more. That's kind of a simple way to know whether you're charging enough or not. And manage growing pains. Invest in the infrastructure that you need for growing to meet the demand before it overwhelms you. But not so much that you're stressed, right? So that's the part about budgeting before, but start to, envision what you may need infrastructure-wise or employee-wise to be able to meet the demand that you're starting to see. But it's a dance. It's a fine dance. It's definitely like a tango. Like, it's a practice. And even after doing it for so many years, the growing pains still are a struggle of how to make sure that you have things in place to meet the demand, but not to grow too big too fast, right? And I've experienced that. We grew too big too fast. We bought a number of trucks. We hired a bunch of people, and then all of a sudden it was like, whoa, this is a lot of money that we're trying to like bring in, and it was too much. So it's a dance. And so, with that, have a wait list in place, and be clear about timelines. Hey, it's going to be next season before we can work with you. We really would love to work with you, and like we're, that's just where we're at right now. And but we're happy to put you on, probably wait list isn't the right term, but we're happy to put you on our future client list or whatever. So I'll finish with in relationship to proposals. Have a good system for calculating, your net profit on a job. As you saw, we use LMN, and that's made it really easy. There's other ways to do it, but lots of people just use an Excel spreadsheet or whatever. But definitely be calculating what your net profit is on a job, because if you're not making much profit on a job, then you're not charging enough. I know that's obvious, but I don't know how many times I did it myself, and I've seen other people do it, where it's like, wow, we're really not making much money and we're working super freaking hard. And one of the best ways to do that is track your actuals. Okay, here's the proposal and here's how it actually came out, labor and materials. Track all of that and then compare them. And really, that's the best way to become a better estimator, is to track your actuals and compare them against your proposal. It takes some time, and we don't do it for every job, but we've done it enough now that it's helped us to become a better estimator, and we know when we need to track that. And we're like, okay, this job we need to track because it may not be that great. And even though sometimes it's like, oh, I don't really want to see how he came out, it's like, it is a good thing to see, and it will help you in the long run, because chances are you're going to have to make a similar proposal at some point in the future. And so if you have that data, it's really great. As I said before, make sure you're including trucks, tools, and all equipment in your proposals. Account for overhead hours. Now, like in LMN, with LMN, it's like you spend like freaking 8-10 hours implementing or inputting all your budget stuff, and so it's pretty comprehensive in the way that it calculates a profit margin, and it makes sure to include your overhead hours. You don't have to do that. Just in your proposal, add a few hours for the overhead time. And overhead, I mean like the time it takes to like email with the client and make the proposal and communicate with the crew and prepare. Make sure add hours into your proposal for that, because otherwise, like, it's amazing how much money you will lose by not paying attention to all those extra hours that go into getting a job going. So it may look like, hey, wow, and this is from my experience for many years. I didn't include any of that, and so it looked like, oh, we did great on this job, but like when it comes down to it, it's like there's not actually that much money left after the year. Where did it all go? And it's like, well, lost a lot of it to overhead actually. So account for those overhead hours. TUR tax. If you're meeting with a client and they seem like they're going to be a pain in the ass, first of all, assess if you can just say, hey, we're not interested in working with you. And that's okay. Like, make that call, because a shitty client can really not only like lose you money, but can really be a headache. I unfortunately have lost sleep because of shitty clients, but if it seems like, if you're getting orange flags, once again, if you're getting red flags with a client, you probably should just say, hey, we're not interested in working with you. If you're getting orange flags, then add what we call a TUR tax. So just like, add a bunch of hours, because you're probably going to have to like talk with the client and visit them a bunch of times, just bring that total up, because if you're already getting orange flags, then just know it's going to be extra time, and you want to go ahead and account for that. And it's going to be kind of a pain in the butt anyways, but if you're getting paid for it, it's not as bad as being like, man, I've just spent 8 hours trying to deal with this client and we're already like losing money on that. So if you're getting 100% of the proposals you send out accepted, it's time to charge more. The rule of thumb, and I agree with it, is like 75 to 80% acceptance is a sweet spot. And I'm all about like having, if there's someone who you really want to work with and their budget is tight, yeah, like totally, like, I'm all about, I don't know what the word is, just like subsidizing yeah, being willing to work with someone whose budget is small. Like I'm all about community care, maybe is the best way for that. To care for those who can't afford our services, because in the end, that's most of the people that need to be growing food or need good food, like probably can't afford our services. So I'm all about like integrating that into your business. But for most people that are going to reach out to us, like, yeah, 75 to 80% acceptance on a proposal is a good place to be. If it's 100%, charge more. Have a clear way to present the project details to the crew. You know, yes, having them see the proposal is great. One thing that has been wonderful about LMN, and once again, LMN does not sponsor me, but it has been a really great improvement in our company, is they have a job planner. So once you make the proposal, it prints out this job planner that you can give to your project manager or to your crew, and it says, hey, these are the materials you need. This is the truck you're going to need. This is how many hours you have allotted for this job, and here's the things you need to do. However you create that, I do think that's an important thing to do. And being transparent, once again, going back to transparency, saying, hey, y'all, this is how many hours that we have allotted for this job, so that they have a sense of that. Now, if the crew's going over, don't assume it's their fault. Maybe you didn't estimate it well, so that's where it's important to have good conversations with people. If your project manager is like, dude, like, holy smokes, why did you only estimate this many hours? This was like way, then it's a good time to be humble and say, okay, thank you. Well, noted. Let's see, incorporate site visits for project managers on most projects, at least the complex ones, the multi-day projects. Like, if you're not the one leading the project and you have a project manager, have a site visit. Some of our site visits are like 20-30 minutes long, maybe less, but sometimes that's like all it takes for that project manager to go into that project and feel confident, and it will just be way smoother. And a lot of times, especially if you're spending a lot more of your time doing the kind of consulting and kind of the back end stuff, it's your project managers who are going to point out things that, because maybe you're a little out of practice, you have forgotten to notice, like, hey, what's the access like here, or hey, did you think about this? And it's like, shoot, no, because I haven't been on job sites as much, and so I think making sure to incorporate them into the kind of the back end of it is great. And really, with our project managers, like, I'm showing them proposals and getting them to sign off on proposals, because sometimes it's like, oh, I didn't even think about that, thank you. And then finally, have good, clear terms and conditions in your proposals. In that handout, I've copied our terms and conditions, and it's hefty, but it's like, the thing is that, like, we're offering a really great service, and it's important to make sure that we protect ourselves, because as a small business, like, it's already hard enough, and so you want to make sure that you have things in place so that if things come up, people, you have it very clear how it's going to be handled. So yeah, that's I don't even know how long this has been, but likely my time is up, and I'm grateful to be here with y'all. Grateful that y'all are doing the work you're doing, and yeah, I hope to see y'all around, and I'll see you when I'm looking at you. All right, take care. Bye.